Hello, kids. Hi, Rudy. Hi, Sally. It's Nana with story time. I'm going to read you another chapter of Charlotte's Web. And sorry I've taken so long to do this. This one is called The Miracle. So let's see here. I'm going to figure a way where I can, well, actually, I'll look at it because there's no picture yet. The Miracle. The next day was foggy. Everything on the farm was dripping wet. Do you know how it gets when it gets foggy outside and it's just the air is so wet? The grass looked like a magic carpet. The asparagus patch looked like a silver forest. On foggy mornings, Charlotte's Web was truly a thing of beauty. This morning, each thin strand was decorated with dozens of tiny beads of water. The web glistened in the light and made a pattern of loveliness and mystery, like a delicate veil. Even Lurvy, who wasn't particularly interested in beauty, noticed the web when he came out with the pig's breakfast. He noted how clearly it showed up and he noted how big and carefully built it was. Then he took another look and he saw something that made him set his pail down. There in the center of the spider's web, neatly woven in block letters, was a message. It said, "Some pig." Lurvy felt weak, brushed his hand across his eyes, and he stared harder at Charlotte's Web. Look at you guys, take a look. Can you see that, Sully? Can you read it? It says, "Some pig," in the middle of Charlotte's Web. "I'm seeing things," he whispered. He dropped on his knees and he started to pray. Then, forgetting about Wilbur's breakfast, he walked back to the house and called Mr. Zuckerman. "I think you better come down to the pig pen," he said. "What's the trouble?" asked Mr. Zuckerman. "Anything wrong with the pig?" "Not exactly," said Lurvy. "Come and see for yourself." The two men walked silently down to Wilbur's yard. Lurvy pointed to the spider's web. "Do you see what I see?" he asked. Zuckerman stared at the writing on the web. Then he murmured the words, "Some pig." Then he looked at Lurvy. Then they both began to tremble. Charlotte, sleepy after her night's exertion, smiled as she watched. Wilbur came and stood directly under the web. "Some pig," murmured Lurvy in a low voice. "Some pig," whispered Mr. Zuckerman. They stared and stared for a long time at Wilbur. Then they stared at the spider. "Charlotte, you don't suppose that spider—" began Mr. Zuckerman, but he shook his head and didn't finish the sentence. Instead, he walked solemnly back to the house and spoke to his wife. "Edith, something's happened," he said in a weak voice. He went into the living room and sat down, and Mrs. Zuckerman followed. "I've got something to tell you, Edith," he said. "You better sit down." Miss Zuckerman sank into a chair. She looked pale and frightened. "Edith," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "I think you had best be told that we have a very unusual pig." A look of bewilderment came over Miss Zuckerman's face. "Homer, what in the world are you talking about?" she said. "This is very serious, Edith," he replied. "Our pig is completely out of the ordinary." "What's unusual about the pig?" asked Mrs. Zuckerman, who was beginning to recover from her scare. "Well, I don't really know yet," said Mr. Zuckerman, "but we have received a sign, Edith, a mysterious sign. A miracle has happened on our farm. There's a large spider's web in the doorway of the barn, right near the pig pen, and when Lurvy went to feed the pig this morning, he noticed the web because it was foggy. And you know how a spider's web looks when it gets wet. Right in the middle of the web, there were the words, 'Some pig.' The words were woven right into the web. They were actually part of the web, Edith. I know. I've been down there and seen them. It says 'Some pig,' just as clear as can be. There can be no mistake about it. A miracle has happened. A sign has occurred. We have no ordinary pig." Well, said Mrs. Zuckerman, it seems to me you're a little off. It seems to me you have no ordinary spider. Oh, no, said Zuckerman. It's the pig that's unusual. It says so right in the middle of the web. Maybe so, said Mrs. Zuckerman. Just the same, I intend to have a look at the spider. It's just a common gray spider, said Zuckerman. They got up and went down to Wilbur's yard. You see, Edith, it's just a common gray spider. Wilbur was pleased to receive so much attention. Lurvy was still standing there, and Mr. and Mrs. Zuckerman, all three, stood there for about an hour reading the words over and over again and watching Wilbur. Charlotte was delighted with the way her trick was working. She sat without moving a muscle and listened to the conversation of the people. When a small fly blundered into the web just beyond the word pig, Charlotte dropped by quickly, rolled the fly up, and carried it out of the way. After a while, the fog lifted, the web dried off, and the words didn't show up so plainly. The Zuckermans and Lurvy walked back to the house just before they left the pig pen. Mr. Zuckerman took one more look at Wilbur. You know, he said with an important voice, I've thought all along that pig was extra good. He's a solid pig. That pig is as solid as they get. You know how solid he is around the shoulders, Lurvy? Yes, I sure do, said Lurvy. I've always noticed. He's quite a pig. He's long and he's smooth. That's right, he's as smooth as they come. He's some pig. When Mr. Zuckerman got back to the house, he took off his work clothes and he put on his best suit. Then he got in his car and he drove to the minister's house. He stayed for an hour and explained to the minister that a miracle had happened on the farm. So far, said Zuckerman, only 4 people on earth know about the miracle. Myself, my wife Edith, my hired man Lurvy, and you. Don't tell anyone else, said the minister. We don't know what it means yet, but perhaps if I give thought to it, I can explain it in my sermon next Sunday. There can be no doubt about it if you have a most unusual pig. I intend to speak about it in my sermon and point out the fact that this community has been visited by a wonderful animal. Does the pig have a name? Yes, said Zuckerman. My little niece calls him Wilbur. She's a rather strange child, full of notions. She raised the pig on a bottle, and I bought him from her when he was a month old. He shook hands with the minister and left. Secrets are hard to keep, and long before Sunday came, the news spread all over the county. Everyone knew that a sign had appeared in a spider's web on the Zuckerman's place. Everyone knew the Zuckerman had a wonderful pig. People came from miles and miles around to look at Wilbur and to read the words on Charlotte's web. The Zuckerman's driveway was full of cars and trucks from morning until night. Fords and Chevys and Buicks and GMC pickups. There's a picture. Can you see all the people? And they're there in a big crowd, and they're looking at Charlotte's web, reading the words, some pig. The news of the wonderful pig spread clear across the hills, and farmers came rattling down in buggies and baskets to stand hour after hour at Wilbur's pen, admiring the miraculous animal. All said they had never seen such a pig before in all their lives. When Fern told her mother that Avery had tried to hit the Zuckerman spider with a stick, Mrs. Arable was so shocked she sent Avery to bed without any supper as punishment. In the days that followed, Mr. Zuckerman was so busy entertaining visitors that he neglected his farm work. He wore his good clothes all the time now, got right into them when he got up in the morning. Mrs. Zuckerman prepared special meals for Wilbur. Lurvy shaved, got a haircut. Principal farm duty was to feed the pig while people looked on. Mr. Zuckerman ordered Lurvy to increase Wilbur's feedings from 3 meals a day to 4 meals a day. The Zuckermans were so busy with visitors they forgot about the other things on the farm. The blackberries got ripe. Mrs. Zuckerman failed to put any blackberry jam together. The corn needed hoeing, and Lurvy didn't come to hoe it. On Sunday, the church was full. The minister explained the miracle. He said that the words on the spider's web prove that human beings must always be on the watch for the coming of wonders. All in all, the Zuckerman's pig pen was a center attraction. Fern was happy, for she felt that Charlotte's trick was working, and that Wilbur's life would be saved. But she also found the barn was not nearly as pleasant. There was too many people. She liked it better when she could just be alone with her friends, the animals. That's it for tonight. We'll read another story soon. I love you guys. Have a great sleep. What do you think about Charlotte's Web? You should look. Maybe if you see a spider's web, there might be writing in it. That would be exciting. Love you guys. Night-night.